It is 6 o'clock, but we're, Miss Teague has asked forbearance as she goes out to get her reading glasses, and having used those myself, I feel like we extend her that courtesy. So as soon as she arrives and is seated, we will begin the meeting. Thank you for your patience.
Sound on the live stream, very marvel. Usually about that.
Marty should be hopefully back in a moment or two. This time I will call the meeting, June 24, 2024 meeting of Catawba County Board of Education to order. Momentarily, we will stand for a moment of silence. And at the conclusion of that moment of silence, Mr. Abernathy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for a moment of silence. Mr. Abernathy.
Would you now put the flag, repeat after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Abernathy, and thank you all for the moment of silence and the pledge. At this time, I will seek approval of the minutes of our June 3rd, 2024. Board members, you've received those in your packet, and there's also a hard copy, I think, in the folder. Is there a motion on the floor relative to the approval of the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes of June 3rd, 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Settlemyer. Thank you, Mr. Sigmund. Motion and a second. All in favor of the approval of the minutes of June 3rd, 2024, 2024, signify by raising your hand. That is a unanimous vote. Thank you. This time I'll recognize Dr. Sober for the adjustment and approval of our agenda.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor, members of the board. We are asking for a couple of changes on tonight's agenda. One is on budget amendments, remove the approval request for school nutrition budget amendment. And then the second is to new business number 3, to add approval of the Parent Square renewal quote for 2024-2025. Also earlier today, Ms. Aldridge emailed us a budget amendment for $10,000, a donation grant, that came in. So I'd ask that we could add that to the budget amendment part as well. Would be number 3 and under consent.
Consent number.
Under number 1, under consent, sorry, number 3 of the adjustments, I apologize.
Okay, yes. So you've heard the request for adjustment. Are there others, or are there questions relative to those adjustments?
I would like to make a motion.
Proceed.
I would like to make a motion to make an adjustment to the agenda. I would like a discussion about the meeting for the 3 school board members regarding the meeting that we were going to have with Leslie, Barnett, Tim, and I regarding the school board goals, and then self-board evaluation.
Is that a legal discussion? If it is, we can do that in closed session. That's my question. Now, you said you had some legal questions. Going to do that in closed.
Well, that would be an attorney-client privilege. An attorney-client privilege conversation.
We can come back after closed session and further discuss any.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So,
He's wanting to add discussion after closed session. So it would be a motion, her additional motion to add that, any further discussion about it after closed session.
okay.
So,
So, let me, to be clear, Ms. King, we will discuss the question in closed session because of attorney-client privilege. You would like to then have it added to the open session after attorney-client privilege? Okay.
yes, sir.
All right, so there's an additional request for open session conversation after we go into closed session on the subcommittee that was to approve and discuss the board self-study, I think was the purpose of that meeting. That is an additional request for adjustment. Are there others? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment of the agenda as adjusted.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Sigmund. And thank you, Ms. Sedmeyer. There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda as adjusted. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. And again, that is unanimous. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Just real quick tonight, would like to invite the board to our Admin Academy, Administrators Academy, on July 23rd at 8 o'clock. We'll be doing just a social breakfast. If you'd like to come and just mingle with our administrators before we get started that day, we'd love to have you. I think last year when I invited you, it was the night before, so I apologize. So this year, we're a month ahead of time. So we'd love to have you come out and just mingle with us before we get going with our Admin Academy. July 23rd, 8 o'clock at App State Hickory campus. And that's all I have tonight.
Thanks, sir. 8 o'clock a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
On the
Sir.
23rd of July.
Anywhere for children to go into that?
Yep, the front door, and you just go in the front of it, and there'll be we're actually behind it on the second floor, but you'll see signs. They'll have plenty of signs for everyone where to go. I think we're on the second floor.
And my experience is you get the administrators and just listen for the noise, Mr. Abernathy. It'll be easy to find. Ms. Davis, I'll recognize you for a public comment.
At this time, the board will convene public comment section of the board meeting. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people who have signed up. I would remind you that each has 3 minutes. When your name is called, if you will come to the podium and announce your name and your topic. And Mr. Sharp, as always, will have the timer up there for 3 minutes. We would ask you to be respectful of other people during this period of time and refrain from making any gestures or cheers or sneers with regard to each other or to any of the speakers. Mr. Chairman, do you want to add any more to that?
No, I would just add that we do appreciate the input, and I'm very proud overall of our public comment section compared to that I've seen in other boards in other counties. So thank you all, and thank you for participating.
First is Charlie Shepherd.
I'm Charlie Shepherd. My topic is American history. I want to start today with a quote from the Reverend Matthias Burnett, a true patriot. In 1801, he said, "To God and posterity, you're accountable for your rights and your rulers." He said, "Let not your children have reason to curse you for giving up those rights and prostrating those institutions which your fathers delivered to you." You know, if our forefathers gave us an incredible Declaration of Independence and Constitution that's created the most powerful, most successful, most free, most benevolent nation in the history of the world. It's our responsibility to preserve it on our watch, intact, to the next generation, our children. I love how our Declaration of Independence ended. Those men were willing to get up and come forward among their brethren, knowing they were signing their death warrants. Their wives or families were at risk. They pledged their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor. Today, I want to ask us all to do the same thing, to be willing to give up our life. That's our time. The willingness to study the Constitution, to study our freedom. The willingness to study candidates and go vote. It's the willingness to take the time to spread the word about the folks you know will defend our Constitution. That's your life. Your fortune, be willing to invest in freedom, to support organizations that defend our Constitution, to support candidates that will defend our Constitution, not change it. To spend the time and the money to teach the next generation about freedom, real American history in our school system. We can do that. All you got to do is that 102? That's how much got left. Okay, I got it. Our children, you just tell them what happened and they will adjust. We have to tell them what to think. Just allow them. Teach them how to think. Give them the facts. It's your life, your fortune, your sacred honor. Be willing to stand up and speak the truth regardless of what it costs you. Get involved, do your part to prevent freedom, to preserve freedom for future generations. And let's make sure that our children and grandchildren have no reason to curse us because we gave up the freedom they should they should have been able to enjoy. We got 5 grandchildren, 6 grandchildren. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We got one on the way, and I'd love for them to attend public schools. Give me a reason to bring them. Thank you.
When I moved into my current classroom, the drawers at the student desks were screwed closed and the built-in cubbies were covered with pieces of old whiteboard. Those boards got broken and the cubbies began to collect banana peels, candy wrappers, and containers of partially drunk juice and milk. During my work days at the beginning of this school year, I bought thicker pieces of wood and covered all of those cubbies. At the end of this year, I had to spend part of my work days painting those pieces of wood. Why? I wasn't surprised to see the drawings of marijuana and penises because those adorn almost every desk in every high school. What did surprise me were the derogatory terms for Black people and gay people. The swastika was the biggest shock. Catawba County has invested a lot of money in school safety by placing an officer at each school and working on infrastructure. But there is more to school safety than having an officer on campus and more fences and locked doors. Some current board members and school board candidates have stated that they do not think diversity, equality, and inclusion or social and emotional learning should be taught in school. They believe home is the only place where students should learn these concepts. Although I wish every child was being raised in a supportive home with adults providing them with sound guidance, they aren't. All students deserve a learning environment where they feel safe. These terms and symbols of hate scrawled anywhere in a school creates a hostile environment. What some children are learning at home is being brought to school and is impeding the learning and comfort of other children. Since educators are responsible for maintaining a safe learning environment, we must also be empowered to help children learn what is and is not appropriate in a shared public space. It is also our responsibility to help students learn that some behaviors can have consequences to their employment and their futures. All of my students, including my Jewish students, Black students, and LGBTQ+ students, need to feel safe enough to learn in my classroom. This year, that meant buying black paint and spending time covering disturbing words and images. It also means students need to participate in programs that help them understand what is and is not appropriate at school and in their future jobs. They need exposure on how their choices impact others and their future. DEI and SEL are not the liberal boogeymen some people fear. They help children be comfortable enough to learn and fully participate in school and their future careers. They are just tools in our school safety toolbox. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lynn Dorfman. I live in Hickory. I commend this board for conducting its recent anonymous survey of administrative staff. Self-review and reflection are important for any organization or person in order to assess, evaluate, and chart a path for continuous improvement. The comments that especially caught my attention address members of this board not understanding their role as school board members and not being aware of the curriculum and instructional systems in place. Well, education is complicated. I know, I've taught, and my limited experience gives me much greater appreciation of understanding how people learn and how to teach effectively. What this board does, oversee a school system that serves nearly 16,000 students with a range of backgrounds, experiences, and abilities, well, it is a daunting task. When faced with a challenging assignment, I often look to see where it's been done well and what experts have to say. For U.S. school board members, there's an excellent resource, the National School Boards Association. Among the resources on its website, nsba.org, is a paper from the organization's Center for Public Education on 8 characteristics of an effective school board. The 8 characteristics are: 1, a vision of high expectation for student achievement and clear goals toward that vision. 2, shared beliefs about student possibility and the system's ability to teach all children. 3, being accountability driven and focusing on ways to improve student performance. 4, good working relationship with staff and effective communications to engage internal and external stakeholders. 5, being data savvy to better understand performance and how to improve it. That reminds me of that famous quotation attributed to Peter Drucker: "You can't manage what you can't measure." 6, strong support for professional development. 7, leading as a united team with the superintendent and with collaboration and trust. And 8, participation in team development and training. As to number 3, accountability driven and focusing on ways to improve, I commend this board's move to create a subcommittee, which I understand meets this Wednesday, to review the survey results thoroughly and create goals for improvement. I look forward to the subcommittee's work and for this system to keep improving, to engage, inspire, and empower, and to be sure to better educate all our students. Thank you.
I think the quotation may have originated with Charles Deming, who said originally in founding the principles of quality, you can't improve what you can't measure, but we can debate that later. Yeah. I only have bookkeeping items today. I listen with my full attention to every speaker, whether they're on the board or speaking from the audience. I have studied the Constitution. Thank you very much. I did have an incredible civics class in 8th grade. I've studied the Constitution ever since. The most important thing about the Constitution in my book is that it is adaptable by we, the citizens of the US. I'll leave that alone for the time being. Now, consistency of policies, in reading through the policies 3.6100 and 3.6100 AP, the administrative procedure, in my reading, there is somewhat inconsistent language between the two documents on the specifics of the role of the superintendent. I just offer that up as food for thought and ask others to go look at it and see if I'm alone in my confusion. It's entirely possible, but I've read it more than once, and I suspect maybe it can be tightened up a little bit. Consistency of board positions has been on my mind for some time. During consideration of the book, 19 Minutes, remember 19 Minutes? The speaker was not allowed to read a statement. The statement had been prepared by Jodi Picoult, the author of the book, in consultation with the speaker who wished to present it to the board. The board voted under consideration to disallow the remainder of the presentation when the speaker turned the page. The irony here is that certain board members have wondered aloud during our various meetings why authors choose certain wording, certain emphasis, or certain presentation. It would seem to be the most obvious thing in the world to want to hear from the author and what they have to say about the book under question. And I'll say this one time, I am personally happy in any future book hearings to fly any author here to speak. And I will stand by that. I've generated something buying books for consideration for the committees. I will generate more. The board's stated role is to support public education in this country. It is crushingly ironic to me that various of our board members are actively supporting candidates for office whose demonstrated intent is to dismantle public education in this state. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to express my gratitude for the dual language Spanish immersion program at St. Stephen's Elementary. I'm a parent of a rising 6th grader and a rising 4th grader, and our youngest is going to start the program in kindergarten this fall. She's really excited, and she's practicing her Spanish counting at numbers at home in anticipation of starting. When we decided to enroll our oldest 6 years ago, I was a little nervous. We are zoned for a different elementary school, and so it meant that all the neighborhood kids would be going someplace else, and busing is not an option for us. We are committing to drive our child to school. But we know that it's much easier to learn a language when you're young and your brain is more open to that. And not only that, but learning a language at a young age has positive brain development impacts for years to come. So we thought we'd go ahead and give it a try for our oldest, and we're so glad that we did. It's been such a great opportunity for our family and for our students, or for our children. It's really amazing to see the work they come home with. Not only do they learn Spanish, but they learn core content in Spanish. So they come home with social studies worksheets in Spanish. And my 5th grader came home with all these science worksheets, like a whole booklet he'd written about El Pájaro. It's so cool and incredible to see. When I'm out in the community, the topic of school comes up a lot because, of course, I'm a parent, and I frequently take the opportunity to brag on St. Stephen's Elementary and the dual language program, and that we have Spanish immersion programs in our school district. People respond positively, and often they say they wish they would have had those opportunities when they were young, which I think, yeah, me too. This is so great that kids in our county have this opportunity. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the great work of the staff and the teachers and administration at St. Stephen's Elementary. They support students and they support educational outcomes, and I've seen them do that across the board in both the dual language classrooms and the traditional classrooms. So I just want to hold them up in front of you tonight. So finally, I just want to say thank you for your vision in implementing this program several years ago, and for your continued support of Spanish immersion in Catawba County. I'm confident that there will be positive impacts from this program for years to come in our community and our state. Thank you.
Good evening, board. I want to thank you for your time. My topic this evening is communication in meetings. And for me, I'm a little puzzled about a meeting that'll be this coming Wednesday. And I've served on various committees through my church, community, organizations, and have previously served on the Board of Education when you have a public meeting that the public is invited to. I have a concern with why a meeting would be held at 2 o'clock if it's open to the public. Yes, there are many people in the public that can attend. Most of those people could be retirees or people that don't work. But for the vast majority of people, they work Monday through Friday. Some of us work more than that. And I compare this as an example, is our church just hired our pastor, first-time pastor yesterday. I chaired the committee. And it would be very ill-willed of me if I would have held a meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday for us to make an important decision, because probably over 80% of our church wouldn't be able to attend. And I ask this very important because I stated to the committee at my church that every decision we make, the intent behind it has got to be 100% in everything that we do. And people thanked me yesterday for the job I did. I said, don't thank me. To me, it's a divine intervention from the Lord, and blessed us in our committee with the person we hired. So I stress to this board, and I understand very clearly what the general statute says about public comments at the meetings, that it only has to be one meeting. Doesn't say that that's what you need to make it. But anytime that this body meets, there should be an opportunity for the people of this county to speak. Just like the previous meeting this month, there should have been public comments. Whether you like it or not, you can disagree with me. There should have been. You were elected here by the citizens of this county to represent them and to be a voice. And sometimes I don't think this board gets that. And I'm not being rude, but every decision you make, whether it's a committee meeting, yes, you have to go to what's best for your agenda. But any time that I've made a meeting, I look at the whole picture. And when you make a meeting, it should reflect the majority of the people of this county, not what fits best for your schedule. Because if you stick your neck out there to run for office, you need to be able to make a commitment to the people of this community. And if you really want to have public comments, that meeting should not be at 2 p.m., not public comments, but for the public to attend whatever the meeting is going to discuss, then it should reflect that where the community has the opportunity to really be able to attend there. So the communication has got to improve, but the intent of any decision that this board makes has got to be taken very serious and 100%, because there's a lot of crucial issues coming down the pipe for public education, and we need to be ready to address those. I thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the public comment section of the board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. And again, thank you to all those who took the time to address the board. We do appreciate your input, and many of our elected boards in our county and in surrounding counties have limited their time to, like a maximum of 1 hour for public comment or 30 minutes. This board has far exceeded that. I'm exceptionally proud of the opportunity that we give all citizens to come and speak and sit and listen to what you have to say. And we appreciate you availing yourself of that opportunity. Thank you very much. This time we'll move to our consent items. As previously mentioned, consent number 1 has been removed. Is that correct?
No, we're just the school nutrition amendment, and then we'd also like we added the budget amendment for the Corning $10,000
Okay.
that the check we just got.
Yeah,
For
so
grant.
as previously mentioned in the adjustment, the school nutrition section of consent 1 is removed, and the acceptance of the $10,000
Yeah.
from
Corning,
Corning
yep.
is added.
Yeah.
So entertaining those adjustments, I will listen to comments or any motions relative to the consent items.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we accept the consent items as they've been presented to us.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett.
I say.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, Mr. Sigmund. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of consent items as adjusted, please signify by raising your hand. And that is a unanimous vote. Thank you. This time we will recognize Mr. Dan Moore for construction updates.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor, members of the board, Dr. Stover. Share with you now some construction updates at a new Maiden Elementary School. This project is nearing completion, and I can tell you that it is going to be a very tight timeline. We are going to have primary parts of the building open, but unfortunately the cafeteria and the gym will not be completed when school year starts. We've made provisions to be able to have our food catered from the kitchen up the hill, and our Quest program will occupy in the kitchen and the gym at the old campus before this is completed. But we are hopeful and thankful for the progress being made. We're excited as that project comes to its end. You see there a great picture looking from the entryway, the entry point of the school toward the library. You also see some porcelain wall tile in progress. We've been talking about our landscaping. They've begun to plant trees, and we're hopeful that they are watering them because it's very dry at present. Next slide, please. It's got something to do with me, Marty. I know it's something there. Yeah, there we go. So ceiling grid and bulkhead being installed there in a hallway. Of course, ceiling grid is one of those final things to be completed. You can see there in that right-hand photo, a lot of the casework for the classroom being installed. You'll see that on the next page. Yeah, I got it. You see an example there of that casework, cabinetry on the right-hand side, and the ever-present cubbies on the left-hand side, which is a necessity for elementary instruction. A picture of our terrazzo as it is being installed. Fascinating process. And this board at the last meeting approved the sealer and the finer polishing. We had opportunity last week to go down and view that. It really looks beautiful. A wonderful job there. And hopefully we'll all be able to see that soon. VCT installation that you see there in a classroom, as well as the wood trim there on that right-hand photograph. And so, as I say, the project is nearing completion. There's a lot to be done. Quite honestly, if we hadn't had the delay with the wet weather, we began to build on the site, and the switch gear that was delayed in getting to us, I feel like we'd be in punch list items. But we're not. But Hickory Construction is doing all they can to deliver this building to us, and we're pleased with the progress thus far. It's quality work, and I'm sure that the community is going to be very pleased with the end product. I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
To be clear, Mr. Moore, our plan is to start students there with the exception of the new gym and the new cafeteria.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Still some electrical work to be done there.
Right. I know that the Maiden community has waited a long time for this, and you know, the few extra weeks or that will take to get it done right, I think will be well received once the final product is delivered.
I agree.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Moore? Thank you for the great work you're doing there.
Thank you.
Moving to our new business section, new business number 1. Karen Barrier will do a presentation on the proposed bonus structure for school nutrition employees.
Good evening, board members. How are you? I have implemented or would like to implement a bonus procedure for the school nutrition staff members. And you can see there's a list of rules for managers and cafeteria assistants is what we call them, and then supervisors. I hope that we can implement this for next school year. It is feasible for all of these schools to meet the criteria regarding the financial portion of it. And I'm just seeking your approval for it. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Ms. Barrier, I just had a question about how many supervisors are there? 4 supervisors.
This means the school will have to have a zero balance on the school.
No, the school lunch debt is not a financial burden that the school nutrition department can take on. It is something that goes to the schools directly. On the positive side, though, we have a lot of CEP schools, so that should be very small this year.
So, Ms. Barrier, just to be clear, all employees will have the opportunity for some sort of bonus.
Yes,
Okay.
they have the opportunity to receive a bonus. It is the first semester of school and then the second semester. And it just depends on their absences, and life happens. So, and we understand that. That's why there's a few days worked in the calendar too.
Right.
And our goal is for them to have the bonus. That's what we want.
Any other questions?
Mr. Taylor, if you don't mind, I'd just like to say that I appreciate Ms. Barrier's leadership, and our child nutrition staff work so hard everywhere. And the thought that she wants to give back to them, and I really appreciate that's we didn't go to her with this; she came to us with this. I think that says a lot about her leadership and how she values her employees. So thank you.
They deserve it.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we approve these bonuses for the managers and school nutrition employees and supervisors, and appreciate Ms. Barrier's leadership in this.
Thank you.
Question before
Okay.
that. Where will this funding for these bonuses?
School nutrition. It is
All
all
from school
through
nutrition?
school nutrition.
Thank you.
Good question. There is a motion on the floor.
A second.
And a second on the floor. Any further discussion or questions relative to the motion? Hearing none, I'll then call the question. All those in favor of approval of the bonus structure presented by Ms. Barrier, please signify by your raised hand. And Ms. Barrier, on behalf of someone who spent 31 years in the public schools, eating in cafeteria quite a bit of the time, thank you for all you do.
Thank you. We
I don't
appreciate
think
it.
people truly appreciate the yeoman's work that our cafeteria staffs do on a daily basis.
It's nice to hear.
Yep.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Carla Aldridge on consideration of our interim budget for the 24-25 school year.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Stover, it's June 24th, and we don't have a state budget, so there's a good chance we're not going to have one by July 1st. And in situations when that arises, and I've been around 31 years, I think 30 of the 31, we haven't had a budget by July 1st. When that happens, we request that you guys approve an interim budget. And I hate to read general statute to you, but I have to. So General Statute 115C 434 says that in case the adoption of the budget resolution is delayed until after July 1st, the Board of Education shall make interim appropriations for the purpose of paying salaries and the usual and customary expenses of the local school administrative unit for the interval between the beginning of the fiscal year and the adoption of the budget resolution. Interim appropriations so made and expended shall be charged to the proper appropriations in the budget resolution. So an interim budget it isn't a budget with numbers. It's authorizing us to continue doing business at last year's levels until a budget is established, and hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. I respectfully request that you approve an interim budget tonight.
Thank you. And again, I think October, I maybe remember one going as long as that. In full appreciation of the large job ahead of the General Assembly, we do appreciate this latitude in the general statute. So you've heard Ms. Aldridge's request. Are there questions or comments? Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion for the interim budget that she has requested.
Mr. Chair, I make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Thank you, Ms. Teague. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the interim budget, the 24-25 school year, which will be at last year's level until a new budget is presented, signify by raising your hand. And again, that is unanimous vote. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Marty Sharp on approval of renewal quotes for Catawba County Schools Technology Department.
Oh, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board, in front of you today, again, my annual request for approval for multiple quotes. I do have two that I'll be presenting, and I believe Kim will have a third. The first one is our light speed safety, security, and impact software. What this is our security software, a web filter for all of our students and staff. These are quoted per student license. As you'll see, the $15,550. If our ADM is increased, which is hopeful, we'll have to add just a handful of dollars to up that number. But this filter is a 24/7, 365 if the students have the devices at home, everywhere. So it is protection for everyone on the web filter side. The second piece of this set of programs is a classroom management program called Relay Classroom. What this program does is provide all of our teachers access to a digital classroom. Every one of their students, if they're working on their Chromebooks within their class, they can push out their screen to all 30 of those students at one time. They could actually look at sharing one student if they are connected to a projector. They also have the capability of seeing screens to try to keep students on task. And if the student is off task, they have the capability of messaging directly, just a little reminder, hey, make sure you stay on task, make sure you're on the correct site or program. The other piece it allows them to do is actually block certain content if they want them to focus on iReady, or if they're wanting to focus on a specific task, they can block all websites and services except for the one. Or they can do the opposite. They can allow all but maybe one. Maybe they see something's being hit way too many times, a Google site or something, they can block that. So it gives teachers full control over their digital classroom and access on the Chromebooks for the students. So that was the second piece of the program. The third piece is actually called Smart Alerts. What Smart Alerts will do is it will notify school administrators. It will notify myself, Dr. Stover, if there's a concern with the student. If a student is looking up how to harm themselves. That actually is something that's triggered through this program. We'll go through what they call human review to determine if it's legitimate. And then if they deem that it is an immediate threat to a student, then they make direct contact with the principal, assistant principal, Dr. Stover, even if it gets to him and me. So this is a program it really addresses the cybersecurity or cyberbullying, my apologies, cyberbullying and suicide process through the state, addresses all of those points. So this is, again, 3 programs bundled together under one price. I have provided 2 different documents. The first one is an annual price, just a 1-year agreement, and it is at $77,750. The second document, I believe, is here. This is actually a 2-year agreement. I always ask vendors if they could work with us on reducing costs, and typically they come back with multi-year agreements. So I wanted to present the board both a 1-year agreement and a 2-year agreement. If you'll calculate that, you'll see that it's about a $7,000 difference. And this is not the quote for 2 years. $139,000 is not due this year. We would pay half of that, and then we would pay the other half for the second year. Any questions about light speed, the filter?
Mr. Sharp, that second year, if for some reason we wouldn't need it, do we have any opt-out that second year?
No, it would be a second year that we're on the hook. It would be. I will say this is the web filter that we have been using for the past, I believe, 5 years. It's a solid program. We like trying to bring all of these services together to have a single pane of glass is what we call it, which basically means in order for us to manage it as a technology department, It's easy to manage because everything's in one location, as opposed to having to buy 3 or 4 different programs and having to roster and do all of those things and go between them.
So with this smart alerts, you
Yes.
said it detects bullying, possibly someone harming themselves through what they typed. I mean, what's the turnaround time on that? Because you said it would go through a human filter.
Sure. So it's automatically, it's instant for a human review through Lightspeed. Lightspeed employs former teachers, former police officers, former counselors as part of that human review team if it gets to that point. Now, if it's just, little Johnny's looking up something maybe inappropriate, it's not going to go to a human review. Something like that's not deemed, imminent danger. So that would go through an email to the principal instead. So it's not that you're going to get so many of those going through human review. They typically look at suicidal thoughts or looking that up, how to make a bomb, things such of that nature that is concerning. Again, that could be dangerous. That's what gets kicked over to human review, and their turnaround time is within minutes. Good question. Any other questions? And I'm not sure, do we need to look at getting approval for each one individually? It's up to the board. You want to consolidate them? Okay. Any other questions about the security or anything of that nature? Okay. If not, I will move to Instructure. This is Canvas. This is, I can't even remember how many years we've been doing Canvas. It's been a while. Canvas is a learning management system that is negotiated through the state. We have been we have paid for the past 2 years for right at 11,024 licenses. This includes all staff in Catawba County Schools, and it includes grades 6 through 12. We do have a huge number of classrooms that are on Canvas in grades 6 through 12. In fact, that was one of our strategic goals, was to try to hit 100% in actually grades 7 through 12. But what we saw was 6th grade teachers really wanted to look at transitioning their students into that middle school by providing them that Canvas learning management system. What this pretty much does is it allows them to upload all of their content that they use within the classroom, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's a virtual environment. This has come in very handy with remote instruction. I believe we had, was it one day we had last year, we had remote? And because we had this product in place, this service in place, all students who had capabilities at home, let's say, had power in every internet service, they were able to access their class that day, and we were able to count that as a student day. So this is really kind of the core product of all of our remote instruction. We do use this within grades K through 8 in Online Catawba, our virtual program. So again, this is the second year that we're looking at paying for that 11,000 number. And you'll see the total cost, including, let me add where was the other piece here? 24/7 support was included. Where am I missing? Oh, it's the tier 1 support. My apologies. It's that very first line. So we utilize our tier one support quite a bit. This is extremely helpful at the very beginning of the year. When teachers come in, their classes are set up for them already. Everything's already rostered, but sometimes we run into some situations to where things aren't syncing correctly, or their grade book doesn't sync correctly to the student information system, which was PowerSchool and is going to be Infinite Campus next year. So the tier 1 support actually works through all of those processes on their side, as opposed to tying up our technology team and Terry Hall having to manage 11,000 users, trying to manage all of these weird issues at the very beginning of the year and throughout the year, of course. So that's why we have that tier 1 support, and they only charge per faculty, or it's only faculty use. Students can't go on to and ask questions about how to do whatever. within Canvas that's primarily just for faculty. And I believe I have everything there. Any questions about Canvas, about the learning management system?
I don't guess I had a question about that, but you said the CDWG does a discount for maybe multi-year.
Yeah.
These people do that too, or that?
So this is a little different because it is going through the state. They have a set price that they do not really negotiate on. I have tried. And here, I will say this as well. The other reason we haven't really looked at multiple years with Instructure and Canvas is because the aforementioned move to Infinite Campus. We will have an opportunity to experience their LMS at no cost. Our concern is we do not want to upset that apple cart right now, right in August when all the teachers come back. The last thing we want to do is make a change to a brand new learning management system and have them have to learn that, plus the grade book, plus everything else they're doing. So what we are looking at doing throughout the year is looking at Infinite Campus's learning management system to see if it compares, let's say, to Canvas. And maybe next year, if we feel it's viable, then we may actually move to that, and it would be at no cost because the state would pay for it. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Great question. Any other questions? And do we want to go ahead and move to Parent Square? And I'll let Ken take over.
Good evening, Chairman Taylor, members of the board. I'm here seeking approval of the renewal quote for Parent Square, which is our two-way parent communication system. The quote for this year, and we do it year to year, is $63,652. This is where is it? Oh, too far. I see it. $63,652, which is at a cost of $4 per student, and it was calculated on 15,913 students that we currently have enrolled in the Parent Square system. It has greatly increased our communication and our engagement with parents. We have about a 99.5% contactability rate across the district, which is phenomenal. We're able to do urgent alerts. Teachers are able to text with parents, private messaging, but it archives all of the communications. So that is a great benefit for us as well, to have that archive. The weather alerts, posts, all of those types of things. So do you have any questions about Parent Square or anything that I might be able to answer?
What did we pay for it
Last year it was about $2,000 cheaper, but our ADM was lower. So we have locked in a rate of $4 per student through the end of 2026.
I've gotten quite a few parents that have expressed to me their appreciation for Parent Square, just how, and I remember when we first started going, trying to use the internet and connecting parents, and then we're talking back in the 06, 07, 08. The level of communication this affords compared to then is literally night and day. So I think it's expensive, but $4 a person, when you look at that, it's about as good a rate as you're going to find anywhere.
Well, it does allow the teacher to contact two primary points of contact for every child.
Right.
Ms. Jordan, would you remind us how we pay for this?
One more question. Do we send out notices to Spanish-speaking parents in Spanish?
Yes, Parent Square has the capacity to push out posts, the posts that we send out in 3 languages. So we selected English, Spanish, and Hmong, that it auto-translates. However, on the parent end of Parent Square, it will translate in up to 33 languages, and they can select which language that they would like to receive the information in.
That's it.
Any others? Thank you, Ms. Jordan. So you've heard the presentation by Mr. Sharp and Ms. Jordan.
for 3 items under new business 3, the light speed safety and security request, the Canvas request, and then the parent square request. Are there other questions, comments?
First quote is for a 2-year.
So we have a choice of 1 year. Are we talking about the light speed?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either 1 year. We have to decide on either a 1 year or the 2 year to reduce the cost overall.
2 years,
Per
the
year.
139.5, and the 1 year.
That's the 77 is only 1 year, and then the 139 is 2 year, but we would divide that by 2 and pay only half of that the first year. Sure. And I will say, the funds would be PRC 073, which are state funds for us, and technology funds as well.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we approve the contracts for light speed safety and security for the 2-year span, and for Canvas for the 1 year, and Parent Square for the 1 year.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor
Mr. Chair, I second that motion.
and a second. Thank you, Dr. Barnett and Ms. Richards. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the approval of the 3 quotes presented signify by raising your hand. Thank you. That is a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Lee Miller on the approval of the 2024-2025 renewal quotes for the Catawba County Schools Curriculum and Instruction Department.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor and board members. I'm seeking approval tonight for 3 different curriculum resources. The good news is I think these are the last kind of big ticket items we'll have for the foreseeable future. The first is Formative, or Newsella Formative. It's something that we've had this past year. It allows our teachers to really have real-time formative assessment data. We use it grades 5 through 12. I looked at our usage because we do want to make sure these resources that we're purchasing, they are being used. So I did look at that. We had over 8,300 users, again in grades 5-12, and we had over 260,000 total engagements with formative this past school year. So I do think it's money well spent, and it is being used, the resource. So that, of course, is $52,107. I don't know if you want to do this individually or combine these 3 resources, however you would like. Combine, okay? And the next we have Envisions Math, which we've been using in our district for quite a while. The total quote for grades K through 8 is $208,684. That's a lot, I know. The first quote we received from Envisions was just over $274,000, I believe. But again, through the work of Beverly McClure, who works with a lot of our textbook vendors, and our teachers and our administrators really trying to zero in on what they're actually going to use in their classrooms, we were able to get that quote down to what you see there, the $208,000 from, again, around $274,000. We are going to do a little funding share with our schools. The district would pay for the online access to Envisions, and then schools that want to use consumables, they would chip in and pay for that. It's going to be $11 for our middle schools and $14 per student per bundle for our elementary. So they have textbook money. We've told them if you don't have the funds, we'll work with you, but they do. And so we're able to fund all those requests that we got for the consumables. And the third quote is relates to our exceptional children's department. And these are 4 resources that we purchased
from Voyager, Sorpus Learning. We've used these resources for a number of years. Language, Live, Rewards, TransMath, and VMath are all programs used in the Exceptional Children's Department to provide that specifically designed instruction for our EC students. And the total of those 4 resources is $54,678. You have any questions for me?
The figure that you gave on the Envision includes what is on our agenda as items 4-2 and 4-3.
Yes, I combined K5 and 6A. I'm sorry. So if you broke that out, it's $128,873 for K5, and it's $79,810 for 6A.
Thank you. I do know that back in the olden days, these were dollars that would have gone to pay for books, and the price commensurately was probably the same, if not a little higher, because this is being delivered via electronic.
So we had the
portal.
option. We gave our teachers the option of you can do just the electronic version, which you can print from,
right?
Or you can have the electronic access and the consumables. So we let them choose. Now, I really think the wave of the future is going to be more electronic access and printing from that than consumables or hardback, just because there's so many tools out there, like we talked about ad minimum last month. And because we are funding that, we'll have to pull back on something. The days of having a textbook for 15 years, those days are over. Those hardback textbooks that we all had in school, they're rare these days. The textbook companies are making consumables, so every year you have to purchase additional books.
But also,
if you want to go that route.
Every year you're getting current content. I remember, teaching from a civics book that would have material in it that was 12, 14 years old, and put in there as if it was a current news flash. This portal creates a solution to that problem anyway. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Wanted to ask out of curiosity, how many schools are opting to do the consumables? Do you happen to know?
I can tell you, Dr. Barnett, that we had, I can't tell you schools, I can tell you, we had 1,251 consumables for K5, but that number does not include resources. We had our warehouse that we had backfilled with, and then we had 212 6-8 that asked for consumables. But again, that number is a little misleading because we had some resources here that we made sure we used, so we'd have to order all the new ones. That makes sense.
Good questions. Any others? If not, then I will entertain motion on the approval for new business items 4 and 5 presented by Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we approve the renewal quotes for items 4 and 5, new business items 4 and 5, and the programs named therein.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett and Ms. Teague. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will then call the question. All those in favor of the quotes presented by Mr. Miller in new business items 4 and 5 signify by raising your hand. Thank you. That is a unanimous vote. So next, Mr. Moore, we have approval for proposed student transfer spaces.
Chairman Taylor, members of the board, before you have a document, the 2024-25 proposed student transfer spaces based on allotments for each school, based on current enrollment. I can tell you that the enrollment is changing daily and will up to and after the start of school. We will manage this beginning here soon with middle and high school transfers. Go ahead and complete those. And our upper elementary grades that don't have class size restrictions. Those are fairly easy to move through, but when we get to the kinders, that's when it becomes the challenge, because we really don't know how many students will actually arrive. So I would seek your approval for these proposed student transfer spaces. We've already received some 240 or thereabout transfer requests. Most of them are tied to childcare, quite honestly, and most are at the elementary level. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You have heard the presentation given by Mr. Moore, and you've got the document, new business number 6, in front of you. So are there questions about either the transfer process or the spaces available? Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion relative to Mr. Moore's request.
I make a motion, we approve the 2024.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Settlemeyer, second by Ms. Teague. Any further questions or comment? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the 2024-25 proposed student transfer spaces signify by raising your hand. Thank you. And Mr. Moore, while you're at the podium, we'll hear your request for approval of the agreement between our board and Holland Hamrick Associates for the maiden middle roof replacement.
Yes, sir. At our last board meeting, we actually approved the project, roof replacement project at Maiden Middle School. We did not approve the contract with our architect, Holland and Hamrick. So I'm seeking approval of that contract at this time. We've been working with Greg and his firm for many years. We're very pleased with the services they provide. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, but I am seeking approval of this contract as well.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. You've heard the request by Mr. Moore to approve the architect's contract with Holland and Hamrick for the maiden middle roofing project. Are there questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the contract. Roof replacement at Maiden Middle, correct?
Yes, sir.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Settlemeyer and a second by Ms. Teague for the approval of the Holland and Hamrick contract. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 8, approval of the contract with Royalwood Associates for the gym floor project at Maiden Middle School. Oh, excuse me, Maiden High School.
Yes, sir. Chairman Taylor, members of the board, this is a Sourcewell contract. It is a purchasing cooperative contract, much the same as Tips USA. This is for the refinishing of the competition floor at Maiden High School in the amount of $39,857. It includes complete sanding, 2 coats of a seal, paint and staining the floor, and then the top coat as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about this project or the proposal from Royalwood Associates.
How often do we strip and refinish?
That's a good question, and I'm very happy to reach to Robert Hoyle, Director of Construction and Maintenance. Typically between 15 and 20.
Okay. Very good. And I know back in the olden days, the more times that those floors were stripped and refinished, it tended to yellow. I've noticed that that is not the case anymore. Are we just spending money on better finish or, because the lighter wood looks really good?
Most of the solvents now aren't petroleum based. They're water based. And so that makes a huge difference with the type of finish that you get. It's
Yep.
not, it doesn't penetrate to the depth those old oil based finishes did in gym floors. So it does create a nicer, cleaner finish. We've
Thank
been
you.
very pleased.
More, do we have any more gyms that we're going to get over the summer? Besides maybe?
No, this will be the only one this summer. Now, we do have some elementary gyms. Carol's Ford, we were down there the other day when we were discussing the modular placement. We had opportunity to stick our head in the gym. We try to take care of our high school gyms, as Robert said, our competition floors on a 15-year basis, elementary as needed. As they age, we try to get in there and get them freshened up as well.
All of the floors are, and I know high school, I think in middle are stripped and re-waxed annually, aren't they?
The gym floors?
Yes.
Yes, competition floors will be.
Yeah. Here we're talking about it basically grinding it down and
Yeah, this is
total
all
a
the
total
way down
redo.
yeah, and you only get to do this 3 or 4 times, and then you have to take out the wood and start over again.
Right.
So, but again, that's 50, 60 years down the road. Too.
Well, a good question. Any other questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for the Maiden High gym floor project.
I make the motion that we accept.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Richards, second by Mr. Settlemeyer. Further questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the gym floor project at Maiden High, signify by your raised hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. And Mr. Moore, one more time while you're up there, approval of bid tabulations and recommendations for Catawba County Schools Maintenance Department.
Yes, sir. Before you, you have a bid tabulation for a project at Maiden High School. As you well know, we've had roof leaks for some time. We have had both the construction company and the roofing material provider to the table a couple of times to no avail. We received funds from Catawba County Commission approximately 3 or 4 years ago to mitigate this problem. We now have a plan in place to address these issues. The bid tab before you is certified by engineer Chuck Howard, who has been our consultant on the project. And we seek approval for $1,286,500 Martin Roofing Systems to complete this project. I'll be happy to answer any questions or allow Robert to help me answer any questions.
Is the amount listed, the $1,286,500, the amount allocated by the commissioners?
We actually had more than that allocated. We've addressed some repairs over time. We've had design services as well. We initially were allocated 1.5. We tried to address it, tried to bring people to the table to address it. Again, to no avail. We considered even litigation. We feel that this is the best direction to go at this time.
Any other questions?
How long do we expect this to last?
It'll have a 40-year warranty, I think is written into the contract.
And the maiden roof has been problematic from day one, has it not been?
Day one.
Yep.
That is correct. The roofer is out of business. The architect is out of country. The construction company is in New York. So it's been a difficult process, quite honestly, to get people to the table
to respond appropriately. It's unfortunate that this is where we're left.
Thank you. Good questions. Is something that'll be done over the summer, or is this gonna?
We will begin the project. We should be able to complete the project regardless if kids are in the building. We'll begin as quickly as we can.
Okay, all good questions. Are there others? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion then. I make a motion, we approve the bid for the Maiden High School metal retrofit roofing project.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Are there other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you.
Still here.
That, is the board agreeable with that, to hear the remainder and consider those as a group? If there's one problematic one, we'll pull it. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Ford, thank you.
So our first one is bid tabulation for 25 with box truck maintenance department. We received funds from the Catawba County Commission for maintenance vehicles. Our recommendation is vendor number 2, White's International, at $119,803. You will note that it is slightly higher than Rush Truck Center. However, it can be delivered in September of 2024 rather than the summer of 2025. So I would seek approval for that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions before moving on to the next project.
How bad a shape is the truck we got now in? Thank you.
I'm very thankful for Robert being here. And thankful for his leadership as well.
You want
Yes, sir. Our next is a proposal from B&L Communications for the replacement of the intercom system at Sherrills Ford Elementary School. That is an aged intercom system, and with the addition of the 4-classroom modular unit, there's no way for us to add emergency communications to that aging system. So we would ask that you approve in the amount of $53,145.20 the proposal for the intercom system replacement by B&L Communications, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Where does this funding come from?
We actually receive a disbursement from the Catawba County Commission for projects that are identified. We actually have 3 systems in the county that are aging, but this one, because of the need for that modular unit outside and being able to hook all that up to make sure that everything is able to be communicated from that new system. We've still got a couple to go that are aged.
Good questions. So this price includes the wiring of those mobile unconventional classrooms once they get there?
So we'll have to create that infrastructure to that.
Right.
And we're currently working with our engineers to take care of placement. With that modular, as it comes in, basically they level it, they set it up, they put skirt on it, they put 2 ramps on it, and they walk away. And we're required to get power, emergency, water and sewer, things of that nature to it.
The price includes those modular buildings in here.
It will have the ability, yes, to communicate
Okay,
to those.
all right.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't make that plain, and that's the reason we've leapfrogged a couple of the others, because of that modular. There's one on the back of that. Valcom is territorial, so you got Fortran Communications at 58090504. We don't have 3 bids because Valcom is, I don't want to call them territorial, but there's only a limited service area, and those are the 2 that are closest that will allow us to use that product. We're trying to make sure that our intercom systems are the same throughout the district to help with our repairs. Fortran is it Fortran? I think that's the other one. Fortran
Yes.
Communications. It's quote 22188. And then B&L Telephone or Communications is quote 22184. Any other questions? Okay, our next is a bid tabulation for Arndt Middle School's EC toileting facility. If you remember back in the fall, we considered adding group toilets to the 8th grade wing at Arndt Middle School, but because of space concerns, we decided against that. This, however, is in an area of storage, and it's at the EC cluster class. Would take up no additional classroom space, and it is needed for those children. Low bidder being Matthews Construction at $63,500, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about that particular project as well.
When would the projected completion of that be?
We're going to start on it immediately. Hopefully by the time school starts, although that will be it's going to be tight to get it ready, but it is needed for those children.
We talked about this in the fall. Matthews Construction was already doing something out there, right? Is that why their
Yes.
bid is so much lower?
We reached out to all of our bidders to ask if they would consider to rebid. So it could be tied to that. It could be tied to what they have in the hopper, schedule, timeliness. They're able to do it, and we're glad for them to do it at that price, quite honestly.
Well, that's a good local company. They're not in New York.
Right. They are not. They are not. Any other questions before we go to painting? And I think that's it for me. So our school painting projects, and you'll note that the funding drops July 1. That's why these are all here. Fred T. Ford, the team locker room and other areas around the gym awarded to TNZ Painting, $31,250. Also at Fred T. Ford, the cafeteria, 100 hallway, and the drama room. Also to TNZ Painting at $128,500. Maiden High, the building core, the 100 hallway, to Sigmund's Painting in the amount of $128,275. At Vandy's High, the 100 hallway and media center, awarded Creekside Construction and Painting, $40,500. And at Bunker Hill High School, the media center and the cafeteria, also to Creekside Construction and Painting in the amount of $48,500. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about our painting project.
Have we used all 3 of these contractors in the past with good results?
I know that we've used TNZ and Sigmund's. I'm fairly certain we've used all of them. We have. We've used all of them.
We've had good results.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Moore, thank you for those presentations. Now, we've already acted on item 9-1, the roof repair at Maiden High. So we will entertain a motion on items 9-2 through 9-5, and that 9-5 includes all 4 of the painting projects that we just heard.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we approve the contracts and bids that were presented to us by Mr. Moore for the box truck with White's International intercom system for Sherrills Ford Elementary School, the restroom installation at Arndt with Matthews Construction, and the school painting projects as outlined with TNZ Painting for Fred T. Ford and Sigmund's Painting for Maiden High School, and Creekside Construction and Painting for Bandy's and Bunker Hill.
Okay, you have heard Dr. Barnett's motion. Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
And we have Mr. Settlemyer's second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, then we will entertain the question on approval of items 2 through 5 as presented by Mr. Moore. Please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you. If it's agreeable with the board, we can hear Ms. Thompson's Compass Academy calendar approval request, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. I think we've just about arrived at that tipping point.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor and board. So tonight I bring to you a complete revision of the Compass calendar. Several months ago, you approved a year-round calendar for them to start in July and end in mid-June next year. After reflection with staffing concerns and the needs of the students, the Compass staff has asked that we revise their calendar so that they more closely match the traditional elementary school calendar. And then there are a few adjustments to that to give the staff and students a little bit more of a break. So if you'll notice, staff would come back August the 12th and students on the 26th. And Marty, can I control this or you've got it? Maybe I can, maybe I can. There we go. In October, on the traditional calendar, we have one day for the end of the quarter on the 18th. We would add a mandated work day for the Compass staff and a second optional teacher work day to give them a little bit of that break. They have had those 3-week intersessions, and so this would take them down to 3 days at the end of October. We did bring them back, same schedule in January with the traditional elementary calendar. And then in March, we added 2 additional work days there on the 12th and 13th. With those 4 work days, they will potentially, based on your pleasure this evening, attend school through May the 30th. So to account for those 4 work days, they will only go 1 extra week. And then finish up on the 30th, and then teachers will finish up on June the 6th. And we added 3 mandated work days in that week that in the traditional calendar was all optional for teachers. Questions that I can answer for you?
You say, am I understanding this correctly? Students will end on June 30th and teachers on July 3rd?
In this calendar, the students will end May the 30th.
May 30th.
Yes,
Okay.
and
Thank you.
teachers on June the 6th.
Was there any inkling of the sentiment in the Compass staff, like when you looked at the original calendar? Is this something that a groundswell that occurred late?
It has transpired in the last couple of months as we have 3 certified staff members, teachers on staff there,
Right.
2 of whom have left, and trying to find folks who are interested in coming back in July and being on that year-round calendar has proven to be difficult. The other piece, and I've had a lot of conversation with Sharon Harwood and Dr. Amy Ashbrook about this, the needs of students there have changed. So when we started 9 years ago, the students at Compass really needed those 3-week intercessions. Now the needs of the students are different, and having those long intersections makes it very difficult for them to come back and get adjusted to being back in school.
So we thought that shortening that time would help us with staffing issues as well as student adjustment periods.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept it.
A second.
Thank you. A motion by Ms. Richards, second by Ms. Teague. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the approval of the amended 2024-2025 Compass Academy calendar, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Council, remind me, do we need a formal motion to take a break? Okay, so we do not. I will exercise my authority as chairman and say we will have to take a 10-minute break at this time.
I don't know if it's catching up or not, but I think their eyes are. Might be open, but it's more palatable. I think they're using a lot. Not just the top, but the big.
Right.
And the expense is so high, we're falling. Stuff they give away.
My husband picked it out. This was pretty. I love the color. Teal, a teal color is my favorite color. I like that color myself.
For your attention and your patience during the break. And board members, thank you. We will resume our agenda. We are now at item number 11 on new business. That is a discussion on proposed additions to the Catawba County Board of Education policy and administrative procedure. Dr. Barnett has requested this. So Dr. Barnett, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have before you three proposals for two additions to the administrative procedure for policy 3.6100, parental inspection and objection to instructional materials, and also an addition to the policy itself, 3.6100. The administrative procedures, they're outlined there for you, that we would add to the administrative procedure that any final decision by the board, right now it's outlined that we have a district committee in that administrative policy, and that it can be sent to the board, it can be appealed to the board, and that any final decision by the board that's contrary to the district committee's findings and decision would have to be by unanimous vote of the board. And in the event that the board couldn't reach a unanimous consensus, then we would stay with the district committee's decision. The second addition to the administrative procedure is that in the event that the person or persons bringing the challenge to the board is an elected member of the board, that that person would automatically be recused from participating in discussions, deliberations, and a final vote. And then on the policy itself, as someone mentioned in tonight's comments, it's a little bit disjointed between the policy and the administrative policy, and I'm sorry, mine went off the screen. Let me get back to it for a minute. Okay, sorry, I've got it up here. That to the policy itself, that if it's a mention in the policy that the superintendent's decision, that he can make a decision and it could be appealed to the board. And I'm proposing that we add to that, that if the superintendent's decision is appealed to the board, then it must be by unanimous decision for the board to overturn the superintendent's decision, and that if there's not a unanimous consensus, that the superintendent's decision would stand.
Okay, you have heard Dr. Barnett's presentations, and you have the packet that she provided there. These are these coming, Dr. Barnett, in the form of motions?
Yes, yes. And I will say on the other pages in your packet, on page, I guess, 2 through 5, I've tried to just indicate where these would come, where number 1 proposal would be added. I think grammatically on page 3, the second proposal couldn't really fit there as 2D. It would just have to be a separate paragraph there, because the wording there says in 10 that the Board of Education within 30 student days of notice of appeal shall, and this would just be an additional, rather than another part of that list, it would just be a paragraph there. And then on page 5, show where suggestion number 3 or addition number 3 would come in.
Okay, you have heard the motion by Dr. Barnett. This is a proposed change to administrative procedure, a board policy 33.6100 administrative procedure. So what Dr. Barnett is proposing is a change in that administrative procedure.
Yes.
It's a proposed change to the administrative procedure and the board policy. So the board policy is the number 3 portion, the way I read it.
Yes, on page 1, numbers 1 and 2 would be part of the administrative procedure where they're mentioned. Number 3 would be a change or an addition to the policy itself.
We're going ahead and making motions before we discuss this as a board.
Actually, a motion can be made. That's why after there's a motion and a second, I always say any discussion. So that's where that part comes in. Currently, we have a motion on the floor. We don't have a second yet.
Second, I'll second.
I got a question.
Okay, so there is a motion and a second. So, Ms. Richards.
Crystal, is what we're proposing, can we legally put this in policy? I guess.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. We voted on.
Now, if the board approves it, it may be that I would recommend we move it to it, like Ms. Barnett said, it might not belong in as 2D. You know, I might suggest you move it somewhere else or whatever. And then I understand there's some confusion with board policy, the policy 3.6100. What I don't think everybody completely understands is there's 2 separate issues relating to challenges to materials. One is with library books. I say library books because I grew up that way, media center material. And the other is with actual text books or curriculum material. For example, years and years ago when Harry Potter was, it's still popular, I guess, but first came on the scene, we had a lot of, and that was actually used as not necessarily a book from the media center checkout. It was used as a class read. Mm-hmm. And we had parents object. And that's to the curriculum materials, supplements and materials. That's the type of thing that would come ultimately before the superintendent, which is what that policy includes both. So I do agree it needs to be cleaned up. I've always thought it's been confusing and to distinguish, but I would, if the board approves this, I would also probably be making changes to 3.6100 to the policy to make it clearer. Just not any substantive changes, just literally two sections. Yeah. 2 sections. Here's what happens when it's a media book and that media policy administrative procedure applies. And here's what happens when it's a textbook supplemental curriculum material. If the board does that, so I may even suggest it anyway.
So I have another question. As far as approval for this, or us voting on this, do we not get a chance to do like a first reading, second reading, like we normally would?
Okay. So with regard to an amendment to a policy, if it's an amendment to an existing policy, it doesn't require first reading and second reading. If it's a brand new policy, then it requires first reading, second reading. Like we're doing second reading on the policies that are all in red. That means this is the second reading. It was proposed as a new policy. So there's only one reading for amendments, and that's what this is as far as number 3 is concerned. The administrative procedures technically are set by the superintendent, but as you remember, there was so much discussion with this administrative procedure. My advice to this board is to vote on it. Dr. Stover could technically change that administrative procedure because the board and the statutory authorization or gives him the authority statutorily to modify the administrative procedures and to effectuate your board policies. And so a lot of that's in his discretion anyway. But my advice is, because this has been such a discussed and pointed issue, my advice was for the board to carefully review that administrative procedure anyway in the beginning, and y'all worked really hard to do that. So my advice in this case is for all that to be approved by the board.
Okay, my other comment on this, as far as I'm not sure why we want a unanimous vote of the board. The district committee does not have a unanimous vote. They don't agree on everything as far as the votes for the review of the book. So why would we, in return, as a board, want to require a unanimous vote on the board?
I can respond to that, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think it's in that very same policy, it starts out by saying that as a governing body of the system, the board is legally responsible for the selection of instructional materials. And since the board is a policy-making body, it delegates the responsibility to the system's professional personnel, granting them authority for the selection of instructional and media materials in accordance with this policy. So we basically, in our own policy, are already saying the district committee decides. We give them that right. And what we're doing in turn is then as a split body, we're overturning their decision. And the vote has been so close, 3-4 usually has been the vote, that I think it's hard to say that that's the board's will, that one way or the other. And that's why I think it's very important that if we're going to overturn our own policy, if we're going to go against our own policy, then let's make it a unanimous decision.
But it's also been close with the committee reviews too. It's been close with, and they don't agree all the time. There's been several times where we have brought up and asked what the vote was, and it was very close as well. So I'm still not sure why you're trying to take that away from us as a board to be able to. Why do we require a unanimous vote versus a being able to have our own say? I mean, we should not have to have a unanimous vote for our board.
We'll have to vote against this motion.
Well, we vote unanimous on every other policy that we pass, and we say the board passed it or the board did not pass it. I don't see any difference in this. policy than any other. I think, yeah, we don't need a unanimous, or as far as we just need the majority. That's the way I feel, because we do it on everything else. Most boards I know of, or any committees I know of, do the same. And this is just showing, if you disagree, we work together, even though we disagree. And we do it by votes. We've been doing it for about a year and a half now. And in some cases, I've been voted down, but I've worked with the board, even though we disagreed. So I feel like we should just not leave it unanimous like we do on everything else we vote.
Would you clarify what you mean by we've been voting unanimously?
I mean, not unanimously. Majority, I'm sorry. Majority all the time. I'm sorry about that.
So what's the point of having an appeal to the board if you're going to require a unanimous vote? Because we never go unanimous on the book reviews, and you know that. So I'm not sure why you're requiring us to do that now, or you're asking us to do that now. We need a voice. We all have a voice here. And I mean, and that's you're taking away from our board, what we do as a board, to decide. And so you're making a decision here now because you know that we'll never agree with the board review as far as the books. We haven't done this the whole entire time.
I'm suggesting a change.
I will say that during this entire book challenge process, one of the things that bothered me the most was that we were asking our educational professionals, parent committee members, to invest time to give us their opinion on books and materials that they had taken hours and hours to review. And then that we would essentially summarily overturn their decision, after 30 minutes of discussion.
Split vote.
That part did bother me. I mean, it devalued the contribution of our educators, in my opinion. And again, that's just my opinion. I'm speaking as a board member now, not necessarily as chairperson, but for what it's worth. Any further questions or comments?
I mean, I don't believe it needs to be a unanimous vote on anything. I mean, that's the whole reason to have a board. Different opinions and things like that. That's what makes up a board. To think a lot on everything would not make us a board. That would just make us rubber stamping things. And I know this is just about the book challenges, but I'm sure you'll try to grow this into other things too as well, not just stopping here. Able to get it done tonight.
I just wanted to point out that, and I'm not sure everybody's aware of this, but there are circumstances, and I'll name one that's pretty clear and obvious, and it's easy to understand. And that is that with regard to student discipline appeals, there was a time when I first started representing the school system that every discipline, every referral to timeout, every in-school suspension, every less than 10 days out of school suspension was appealable to the board. And for the most part, up until that time, it had been managed by committees of the board. They had hearings. We did a massive review, and the reason I'm telling you this is so you can have some context. We did a massive review of what the board thought it would be beneficial to the board and fair with regard to student discipline. And in that particular case, the board, and the policy is still the same since that time, the board decided to make anything less than 10 days out of school suspension appealable only to the superintendent. It could not be appealed to the board. So to put this in perspective, and I'm not siding with either person, I'm just explaining that there are times that not this board, but a school board has chosen not to make something appealable to them and to stop it at a administrative or staff level. So that's not unheard of. And it's possible to do. And again, I think in that case, just using that as an example, the board that decided it and then has continued to keep it in place, and you'll have the opportunity to change it if you want to, is that board wasn't trying to silence the board's voice with regard to every discipline. It was really a matter of putting in charge or leaving in charge who they felt like should be in charge of student discipline, and that was the principal and Dan Moore, operations, because it goes through Dan Moore and then to the superintendent. That's an example, just to put this in a bigger context of how this board can limit appeals to itself.
One more comment. I'm addressing point number 2 with the proposal to add the following provision as item D to the section number 10 of Administrative Procedure 3.6100 parental inspection and objection to instructional materials. In the event that the person bringing the challenge before the board is or also an elected member of the board, that person or persons will automatically be recused from participating in the discussions, deliberations, and final vote regarding the challenge materials. I don't agree with this, and the reason why I do not agree with this is because other board members from other schools have been able to bring things. It doesn't matter if this was a book that a board member thought was inappropriate, but other things that as a board member that we should be able to bring to the attention of our board. And that is part of our job as elected officials, to be able to do this. And I think that has taken away my right, your right, anybody's right that is on this board to do that. And I feel strongly about that.
I feel strongly in the other direction, in that I think it's been one of the biggest questions I've gotten from the public. It even showed up in our recent survey about why is that allowed? Is that ethical? And I have to say to me, it is not ethical to be both the prosecutor and the jury.
And I started that book challenge before I was even elected to the board. So, and that is just the reason why that ended up that way. But still, even if anyone else had an issue with a book that they thought was inappropriate, as a board member, you should still have that option to bring it to the board. And also the other situation with that is that it will never be the same on this board, because even if you do recuse one person, it's going to be a tie vote. At the board that we have right now is a tie vote. So you automatically have decided what the decision is on the book prior to even listening or even letting the person bring that to the attention of the board.
By these changes, it would have to be unanimous.
Are still in what you're proposing for these this policy and the other policy, you are taking away what we are elected to do as board officials.
Should vote against this.
And I plan to.
Okay, any other discussion or input? All right, so there is a motion on the floor for the amendment to policy number 3.6100 and the accompanying administrative procedures as outlined by Dr. Barnett. Motion was made by Dr. Barnett, was seconded by Mr. Abernathy. Hearing no further questions or comments, I will call the question. All those in favor of Dr. Barnett's proposed amendments as presented, please signify by raising your hand. That is Mr. Taylor, Ms. Richards, Dr. Barnett, and Mr. Abernathy. All those opposed to Dr. Barnett's amendments, signify by raised hand, please. That is Ms. Teague, Mr. Sigmund, and Mr. Saddlemeyer. So, Ms. Davis, as you previously mentioned, you'll be looking at the language and essentially cleaning that up and making sure that it all flows appropriately, and then giving us back at the next meeting, presenting us to that as the new procedure and policy administrative procedure. Thank you. Our Our next item of business is approval of proposed amendments to the Board of Education, and I will recognize Ms. Davis.
So the first three policies are here for second reading, and that is the online instruction policy 3.1020, innovative curriculum and instruction policy 3.1030, and students at risk of academic failure policy 3.4410. Those are on for second reading. I don't believe there were any questions about these the first time they were on. If there are, I'll be happy to talk about those. Otherwise, I'd ask that those be approved on second reading. The next, and if you want to pull any of these out, that's fine. The next one is proposed for deletion because it is included in policy 7.1700. It is related to non-school employment. You will see in the next couple months, sometimes the School Board Association recommends that we consolidate like ideas and like topics together or similar or related, and sometimes they propose that we separate them. So for example, the Student Code of Conduct has in it, that I'm going to be bringing later, one of the last ones, it has in it issues relating to criminal investigations, issues relating to search and seizures, issues relating to search, like animals are part of dogs. Drug sniffing dogs are part of search and seizure. All of those things, we have all part of one policy, and they're proposing that we separate them out. So this is an example of the non-school employment where they've added it together with a pre-existing policy, is what I'm saying. We already have the information relating to non-school employment in policy number 7.1700. The next is an administrative procedure, which is not necessarily required to be approved, but and it is it's consistent with what we have been doing. They have added or suggested the language be added that seclusion and restraint will not be used on students with disabilities for behaviors that would not result in seclusion and restraint of a non-disabled student, or based on assumptions or stereotypes about disabilities or students with disabilities. Well, we're not supposed to be doing that anyway, so we just put that in writing. The other is a sort of a clarification of prone restraint. Prone restraint can be used in certain medical interventions, but, and that is when you're face down. So it's carved out to say prone restraint is a form of physical restraint in which a person is held in a face down position on the floor, but it does not include placement in a face down position as part of a medical intervention. I don't know what that could be, but there are medical interventions that could require that. So that otherwise prone restraint is prohibited. Authority of school personnel, the additions there are really a rewording and just characterization or differentiation between the principal and their authority and the teacher and their authority. In the beginning, or the old language simply said, it's the responsibility of the administrator to fully investigate, without actually talking about the obligations and responsibilities of the teachers in the classroom as well. Even though that's part of their job description, it's now part of our policy. Student records, discipline records, that simply was minor technical changes. Communicable diseases students, those changes are made primarily because of changes in how science views HIV and AIDS, those sorts of things. For the most part, in the beginning, it was it was originally drafted, the language originally was drafted in a way that HIV or at a time when HIV and AIDS had no real, there wasn't as much control medically that doctors had with it. And so those changes are one, to define communicable condition and a reportable disease or condition, and also to realign the reporting requirements. It used to be you had to meet in secret and all that. In the past, we've actually done those things. So anyway, then the last is employee dress and appearance. And what I wanted to point out with these is this is the changes proposed or recommendations from the School Board Association. But the stuff in yellow that I have there is what we had in our policy that it's my advice to leave in the policy. The language, the board affirms its expectation that all personnel shall be professionally, neatly, and appropriately attired to perform their duties and responsibilities as employees. That's as far as we can go anyway. We can't say, if they're not doing their duties, they have to wear a certain thing. So the other thing is leaving in the language in number 1, duties and responsibilities. Proposal number 5, it's my advice to leave that in, whether the dress projects a positive image and instills confidence in the employee with parents in the community. That makes it more of a local issue and standard. Number 7, leaving in whether dress creates a positive role model for students. And again, these are subjective, but unfortunately dress codes are subjective. And 8, whether the dress violates or reinforces the requirements of the student dress code in policy 4.3600 of the Code of Student Conduct. So I guess the point of that is to be consistent among those two. And that's not any administrative procedure. This is just your policy. Any questions about those proposed changes, and then wanting to keep in what's in yellow on that last one?
Any questions on any of the proposed policy changes presented by Attorney Davis? Hearing none, then I will entertain a motion for approval of those amendments to our Board of Education Policy Manual as presented by Attorney Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we approve on second reading the first 3 items that are listed as new business 12, that we approve the deletion of the non-school employment policy, and that the final 4, 5 policies that have additions and changes, non-substantive changes to them, that they will be approved as they've been presented to us.
Okay, Dr. Barnett has made the motion. Is there a second? There is a second. Any discussion on any of the relevant policies in that motion? Hearing none, then all those in favor of approval of the policy amendments as presented signify by raising your hand. And that is unanimous vote. Thank you, Ms. Davis. That brings us to the end of our approved agenda. We will now go into a period of closed session for attorney-client privilege and personnel items. At the conclusion of that, we will come back into open session. Thank you. We need to have a motion to go out of open session and into closed.
I make that motion.
Second.
Out of open into closed.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. All in favor of going from open session to closed session, signify by raising your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. We did. Okay, thank you. I stand corrected. So we are back in open session officially. We have action on, as been presented, personnel recommendations on consent or closed session 1 and 2 as presented in our closed session discussion. I will entertain a motion on those.
Second.
We have motion and second on the personnel reports. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the personnel report, signify by raised hand. And that is everyone. And that brings us to the end of our open session.
Just 1 second. I need to make a motion to reschedule our meeting for July for the committee meeting.
Specifically what committee?
Or what the meeting that we have with Leslie, myself, and Tim. He submitted more information and we need time to review it. Tim and I have not had time to review it.
There was no new information. It was what Ramona Powers from North Carolina School Boards Association gave us originally. I just passed it on in electronic form.
Oh, I haven't had all that information.
You received it in-
Not, I looked through some of it and it was not the whole thing.
There was a motion made, so before we can discuss it, there has to be a second. Second to that motion. Hearing none, then that motion will die for lack of a second. And that meeting scheduled, Dr. Barnett, for when?
Like to say that was a date and time that Ms. Teague asked for.
Okay, so Wednesday at 2 p.m., all those on the committee who are able to attend that meeting.
You asked for
and
that. I
any
did.
members of the public are welcome to attend. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you, and we will see you next month.